Welcome to the Welder. It's great that you're here in person.
If Mark and Maria were coming to the bank, they actually need to talk to their relationship person. And what I would say about that is that relationship person is your advocate within the bank. And so actually by sharing your information, your aspirations, your strategy, you go a long way to helping yourself with the organisation. I think the other part is understanding what your risks are, because a lot of people will have great opportunities, but they aren't able to actually articulate some of the risks that they may incur. So they're always looking at the upside, and not necessarily like bankers like to do, is look at the downside. So by actually helping your banker understand your business and understanding the risks, you'll go a long way, and even with your investors, if possibly going forward, a long way to helping you on that journey.
So I actually found my first angel investor, as it were, through a university competition. So it's effectively friends and family, sort of an extended network. And he became my business partner, and that's how we raised that first, I think, 250K, which wasn't a lot of money, and we ran out of very quickly, but was that first step into capital raising. And that was very quickly followed up by our first equity crowdfunding raise. And that was how we decided to fund it initially, because the request for information, it's easier. The due diligence is much easier with equity crowdfunding because the idea of approaching an angel investor, or PEs and VCs were well off at that point anyway, but that was very, very daunting for someone who'd never raised capital, had no real idea how to do any of this. But there was also the fact that equity crowdfunding felt very friendly. It felt like you were getting a whole bunch of people who supported you and believed in your business to financially support you to do what you wanted to do. And I always recommend, if it's a business with a brand that has a bit of a following or is something that can engender support because of what it does, I almost always recommend equity crowdfunding as a really good thing to investigate if that's what they want to do.
I think Brown mentioned it, having an understanding of your why. What is it that you want to get out of the next 4 or 5 years of your journey, and a really clear understanding of where you are in that journey. I think also it's around values. I think also making sure that whoever you get to come on board with you shares the same dreams and aspirations you do, and you've got that value fit, and I think that's really central.
2 points I'd make about advisors. There's kind of 2 key roles here. One is your technical advisors. So if you were planning on doing any kind of capital raising, whether it's crowdfunding or whether it's an IPO, I cannot emphasize strongly enough how important it is to have a good team working with you, whether it's your legal advisors, whether it's your corporate finance advisors. They will be your guide around the process and the legalities of actually executing well in that space. But equally important, possibly more important, is having around you a team of people who I've heard it characterised as critical friends, which I think is a really good way of describing it. So people sitting around a board, or however you want to describe it, who will challenge you, who will ask you why your why is what you say it is, and do you really want to move this fast, and are you ready to take these risks, and are you willing to be subject to this degree of scrutiny? Have you got the bandwidth and the capability within your organisation to actually execute well? And have the conversations that work through that process and then help you put in place those things afterwards.
Our role as a government agency, we are assisting them to develop that plan. So much of our work is on validating their plan, validating the market. We have a strong trade team around New Zealand, as also around the world. So we are helping them on these validating, researching, and then also we been able to provide financial services to help these companies to develop.
No one's going to thank you if you run out of capital. Being clear, to Kenny's point around your plan and when you need that capital, and understanding how you're going to spend it and be able to articulate that to possible investors is really, really important. You don't want to have money just sitting there not being used, but actually the reality is you're better to have a little bit in the bank to actually support that growth early than late.
Totally. And it constrains your ability to continue to grow, so you run out of oxygen. So very much, as Brown said, when you think you've got capital, you should be thinking, and particularly if you're a fast growth business, it always takes longer, so 6 to 9 months potentially, to raise capital of scale. You just need to bake, a 12-month window into your sort of horizon, really.
it's kind of like speed dating in that initial period. You talk to a lot of people who are actually portraying themselves to be something that they are not, and you kind of have to treat them as the enemy, because what they say and then what they will do or put in potential contracts later on is completely different. And we got very close with 2 VCs. My point is, it's not a particularly pleasant process. So that initial period of time of only talking to people who reached out to us was not a good strategy. So then we flipped it and we started talking to people who we knew fit. Eventually we landed on what's effectively a family office, more than a typical VC. And they are values-led. It's led by a billionaire. He is super invested in ocean health, and he donates some insane amount of money every year to environmental protection. And that, to me, values alignment. Easy.
First and foremost, like, people will get approached, from they might get a cold call from an investor or someone who's been not stalking them, but has been watching their progress over time. And there is a huge amount of capital out there, particularly at the moment, chasing returns. So just because you've been approached doesn't mean, if you have got capital adequacy, don't need to jump. You can just take your time. But assuming you're then going through the process, you've got your ducks in a row and you are actually ready to engage. I think it's going through. A lot of people will present nicely on the first date, and they'll say, we're going to do this for your business, and we've got all these values alignment. But the real crunch comes when you are actually starting to talk deal terms and legals, and the position of we were once really cosy and friendly, and these are all our alignment. Some things do change. So having a good suite of advisors around you, particularly lawyers, I think is really, really important. And also having a real clear understanding of what you bring to the table and what you are wanting from that other party. So it could be a technology leap that you're seeking, or it could be access to a new channel to market, or experience. They've done it before, they've helped grow. So I think those are the things that need to go through your mind.
How much are you prepared to risk? Who is it that's going to take your business to the next level? Is it you and a bank, or is it you and an investor, or a group of other people? And I think it depends a lot on your personal preferences at that point. Even private equity firms know at a certain point that they will move to the next point, they will let someone else grow their business. So I think that's where you've really got to think about, we talked earlier on about aspiration. I think a lot of New Zealanders sort of in their aspiration is, I've got this check and I'm done. But actually the opportunity, and I think what Brianne's done that, is that you can also roll your capital through with these providers and continue with that journey. And I think a lot of owners walk away maybe too early and don't see it to its fruition, and then realise actually they can leave a little bit on the table and continue to roll through and give up a little bit of that thing which is called control, which they don't like to do. But when they realise that they have the right partners, things can go really well for them. We don't want to see our customers fail. The most important thing for banks is actually we want to see you all succeed, because actually your success is our success. So the reality of that is that we will work closely with our customers to make sure that we're either through covenant relief, helping them raise capital, introduce them to the right advisors. We want to make sure that you are resilient. But sometimes, as I think Steve made a point, there does come a time where you have to call an end to it. But we will fight very hard with the owners to make sure that doesn't occur, right? We want them to survive. We want them to succeed and grow. So the reality of that is we can either provide more credit, but once again, make sure you're clear about what you want. Make sure that, if you're asking the bank for money or more money to help you to survive, that you're clear about that plan, that you actually have a plan to raise more capital in the future to repay back the bank, or your plan is clear. And then to your point, make sure you deliver. So don't overpromise. So think about making sure that you've got a plan that you can actually execute on.
It goes back to Fergus's point about having good relationships with your bankers, having conducted your business operations and your relationship with them in such a manner that there's a high degree of trust, and that if you go and ask for relief around covenants or you need some additional funding, that's coming from a really strong platform where they know that you generally execute on what you say you're going to do. The business is run with discipline, the capability within the business is there, and that makes that conversation a lot easier to have. The other thing to bear in mind is also just be really aware of how your business works and the speed with which cash moves through it. So I'm chair of the New Zealand Merino Company, and we discovered through COVID that we sit in between two sets of contracts. We have contracts with wool growers on the one side, and we've got contracts with brand partners in the market on the other. The sheep don't stop growing the wool because it's COVID. That wool just keeps on coming, and it doesn't come throughout the year. It comes very concentrated in a particular part of the year. So we have to pay them. There's a contractual relationship. So there was a big pressure on us to ensure that we had sufficient funding to keep making sure that the farmers were paid, and that would enable the business to keep operating whilst we negotiated with our brand partners on the other side, who were suffering catastrophic loss of demand from retail. And we worked with our banks, and we actually did a capital raise, and I can attest to the fact that raising capital the grown-up way is incredibly time-intensive, having chaired the due diligence committee for that process. It's a very expensive process, it's a very time-consuming process for management, for the board, for your advisors, and take as much as you can within reason, because you don't want to go out and do that again soon.
You can call it the end, but most people only really get to sell their business once, right? And so it's quite a big decision. And then the other thing is actually, what are your motivations? Because sometimes the motivations aren't just about the money. It could be succession, it could be for your kids and family, so you really have to think about that. Can they actually afford to buy you out? Can your bank be the replacement around that, for example? That evolution in terms of your thinking and where you want to be, like, do you actually just want to put your feet up and retire, or do you want to continue to keep working? They are really big influences in terms of when you want to sell. All right, so be clear around that. So in your involvement, because it doesn't mean you don't have to walk away completely, right? And so you can still be involved in different ways, or to your point, if they say it's a trade sale and you sell to a competitor or something like that, then it's a very clean walk away.
So whenever we talk about exits, and you could argue I've sort of semi-exited because I did take some cash off the table in the round in October, my decision on working, so I'm not bound to the company, but I wanted to continue working with the company for 5, 7, 10 years, maybe not in the current capacity because I suspect the company will outgrow me, but I want to keep working with the company because of the people we partnered with. If we had made a different decision and we sold off to a CPG, I would want nothing to do with it. So it's kind of hard to be clear about the exits that you want, because life isn't clear and the opportunities you are given aren't clear. So I totally get your point, but I've never found it to be that simple myself. What I thought I was clear on changed when I spoke to some people, and they got me excited about the business again.
Being ready, investor ready, I think, is a coin that we're sort of using now with our clients. And sometimes that grooming or getting investment ready can take 6 to 9, 12 months. But if you can be, and that could be around systems, it could be around people and talent, and particularly if you're looking at exiting and you want a clean exit, you don't want to be staying in the business, or you want to reduce your involvement. Looking at people who can actually step into your shoes is really important to do that early.
Be really clear about your why. I think Brianne has been, it's really good to hear, the overwhelming why of why Atik was set up, because that will inform all of the decisions you take after that point. Be really clear about what you want to achieve over what time frame and what that means for who you might choose to work with and how they can get you there most effectively. And then lastly, choose very carefully who you have around you, both in terms of expert advisors, but also who you let into your inner sanctum as your directors, your board, your confidants, who you want to not be yes people, you want them to be challenging you, probing, asking, but all the way in a supportive manner that is wants to take the business to the best place.
I think if you have a clear understanding of your own identity and your value set, it will help shape who you partner with at the time of partnership, and also ensure that your aspiration and your goals, you continue to hold those true. I think that's really, really important, and it's not a surprise that the most successful companies and the most successful people have that really clear identity of why and their purpose. So, and purpose-driven entities are just so attractive to be alongside, and they attract capital just by their own brilliance.
Rein in your hockey sticks, oh my God. All you're going to do is not only do you look stupid in those initial meetings, but when you don't achieve it, if you stick to that, and you raise capital and you don't achieve it, all you've done is undermined any trust. And when you next have an issue, they're not going to believe that you're going to resolve it yourself. So they're going to want to step in. They're going to want to put people in positions, and it's going to undermine your whole business. So you need to have a position of trust, and that starts with forecasts and valuation.
Be open and transparent about your plans. So there are no surprises, especially for your bankers. We hate surprises, as I said. But more importantly for your investors, as Brian pointed out, your advisors, if you hide stuff, it will come out, right? So be open, be honest, right? It's really simple stuff.